Labs operates the Ting sensor network. So we've got a network of approaching 1 million of these very sophisticated Ting sensors distributed across the country in homes. And they individually, they work to protect homes and prevent electrical fires. So they're very sophisticated power quality monitors. We detect faults in electrical wiring inside of homes. But the network of sensors is able to monitor the electric utility grid with extraordinary precision and accuracy. So, so basically what we're able to see is whenever the utility grid is getting stressed or there's faults occurring on the grid, that's all, measured by the Ting sensor network. We have Ting sensors in essentially every neighborhood in the Los Angeles area. So there's about 14,000 sensors across the Los Angeles area. So, what we know from our data is that, homes in the immediate vicinity of where the fires ignited remained powered and energized up until the point that the fire started. What we also know is that the sensor network was detecting faults with increasing frequency up to the point of the fire ignition. So faults are caused by tree limbs touching wires or wires blowing in the wind and touching. It creates a spark and a fault, and we detect all of those things. Importantly, what we cannot say is whether one of those faults caused the fire. We don't know that. What we know from our data is that there were increasing faults on the grid in the area around where the fires ignited. But again, we can't say whether specifically whether one of those faults caused a fire or not. There's a number of things that can cause a utility grid fault. So it can be vegetation, blowing in the wind and a limb touching a wire. Sometimes wires are swaying, right? So if a wire sways and touches a pole or two wires touch each other, that can cause a fault. Or it could be a piece of grid equipment. A wire could pull loose, right? It's being stretched in the wind and it could pull loose. Or a piece of grid equipment could fail, like a transformer could fail or something like that. Any of those things could cause a fault. They all cause a spark. It's just a question of whether the spark that gets generated in the fault creates a fire. Not all of them do, obviously. So basically what the data shows is that as soon as those powerful Santa Ana winds started to kick up, as the winds increased, we start to see an increasing frequency of faults. So, in the Palisades area, we measure about 63 faults prior to the ignition of the fire. And those are primarily in the, 2 or 3 hours leading up to the fire. In the case of the Eden fire near Altadena, there's 317 grid faults that occurred in the hours preceding the ignition. And then in the Hearst fire, there's about 230 faults that occurred that we measured on the sensor network. Normally, there's very few faults on a given day. If it's normal weather and it's not windy, you don't measure faults like this. So these faults increase significantly as the winds kicked up in the hours preceding the fire ignitions. The important factors are really, two things. One thing is that the communities in the immediate vicinity of the fire ignitions remained powered. So their power was not shut off immediately around where the ignitions happened prior to the ignitions, and that faults in the area were increasing. But again, we can't say definitively at all whether one of those faults caused a fire.